Welcome back to Is Anything Real in Paid Advertising, the show where we sift through the metrics of messaging and messaging madness to find what's actually driving impact. I'm your host, Adam W. Barney, and today's guest brings a rare blend of strategy, soul, and sharp storytelling. Mary Kate McGowan is the founder of MK McGowan Studios, where she helps purpose-driven organizations craft content that cuts through, especially in climate, coaching, and justice-centered work. This episode is about more than ad campaigns. It's about narrative power. Welcome, MK. Let's get into it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Adam. I'm excited to be here.
I can't wait. So, MK, I know your roots are in journalism, content strategy, and coaching. What pulled you toward founding MK McGowan Studios?
Yeah, so I started out as a newspaper reporter. And as a lot of people know, the journey between newspaper reporter and content marketing is a well-trodden path. So I made that leap a couple years ago and spent a good chunk of my career at the intersection of media and marketing. And then I really got into how can we make marketing more effective? Instead of presenting all these problems, giving people more context behind the problems, how can we better present solutions? So that's when I really made the jump to working with early stage startups and purpose-driven organizations, giving them the narrative structure, the frameworks, kind of like some tips to better tell people what they do and why they're important and why people should care um, when it comes to their solutions. So that is the main driver behind Mary Kate McGowan Studios, MKM Studios. So I'm excited to continue partnering with these mission-driven and purpose-driven brands and organizations, just to spread their word and spread all the good work that they're doing.
And why do those specific threads matter so much to you, and why now?
Why not now? I mean, I think, sorry, I'm a little
No, I get it.
that was just a gut reaction.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think that finding work that aligns with my personal values is really important to me. I think in the field of marketing, for the longest time, I asked my question. I was like, do I even like marketing? Do I think this is worthwhile of my time? Should I be driving people's eyeballs to these e-commerce pages? And there's nothing wrong with that. But I do want to make sure that my work and how I spend my time has a higher purpose and really speaks to what I believe in and not just like adds to the noise, but really cuts through it to make sure that people can find solutions that they want. And that doesn't mean that products and solutions are bad, that, Amazon is the devil and all that kind of stuff. It just means better connecting with people who need what you're selling. And so you're not targeting, a mom of 3 when really you should be targeting like a dad who is just also an entrepreneur who also has a podcast and like all these other things. Just better speak to your audience and, do what actually needs to be done.
Yeah. Can you talk about a project or a campaign that you've worked on that felt like it actually moved the needle in the spaces?
That's a great question. So thinking just over all the clients I've had, I can't speak directly to, all of them, but, a previous life, I managed some publications, some digital publications for the association that published the leading international industry efficiency standards for commercial buildings. So it sounds not sexy, but we all do love our heating and air conditioning systems, especially when they're not working. So being able to like dig into just the nuts and bolts of those systems, but actually how they fit into the intersection of how people interact with buildings, being more intentional with energy usage, being more intentional about like what systems you're putting in place and data tracking. That was really interesting. And just being able to tell that story through different content vehicles. So podcasts, magazines, digital publications, newsletters. But one of the times I really saw the needle move, it was actually kind of a macro trend. So when I started at that association, building decarbonization was a like taboo topic. Like I brought it up, I pitched it, and they're like, "Oh, we absolutely cannot write about that. Like we will get slaughtered." But now, just found out that like building decarbonization is like that association's like bread and butter now. So I like to say that I kind of helped move the needle, just kind of like shifting from like, oh, we should definitely not be talking about this, to like now when you think of built environment and sustainability work, like building decarbonization is definitely like one of the top trending topics in that space.
Hmm. So I love that. I mean, you've worked with coaching clients too. How does narrative shape transformation in that context versus climate or systems work that maybe you do more on the content side?
Another great question. So I think on the coaching side, it's all like to tell that transformation story. I just said the key word, it's a story. Someone is looking for help with something, they know where they are, they know where they want to be. It's the in
Mhm.
between that's confusing.
Right.
So, I mean, just think about the traditional hero story. A hero has a problem, he faces a challenge, he meets a guide. So, think Frodo, think Gandalf.
Yep.
They embark on a journey together, and then eventually Frodo does throw the Ring of Destiny and Mount Doom, and Middle Earth is saved. So, it's like you don't have to rewrite the grand stories of all time.
Right.
Everyone wants to see themselves as the hero. And as
Right.
coaching, I always advise coaches to think of themselves as those guides leading the way, showing
Mm,
them it's kind of like these are lessons I've learned, or like these are patterns I've been seeing. Let's talk about it. Let's break it down. Help me understand why you're making these choices, or like, why you think these are your only choices. Um,
right.
so like that's like the big nugget I help coaches see. It's not about you, it's about your client. Make them the hero.
Mm, yeah. Yeah. That's fascinating. And I mean, uh, yeah, what advice might you have to folks who are showing up online or who are trying to show up online without selling out their values?
Oh man, welcome to the club. So it's good to have even more of us. So I really think it goes to really why you're showing up, why you want to show up, and what you want to use your voice to say. You don't have to be, the leading voice on climate change, or the leading voice on how everyone should be more responsible with AI usage. There's
Right.
lots of pressure that we tend to put on ourselves, especially people who are feeling like they do need to show up online,
Right.
especially in a professional space. So give yourself some grace, give yourself some slack. But then also, one of the big nuggets I share is kind of take a step back, think about your goals, what you want to do, what you want to accomplish, and then even take a further step back and come up with your own story. So, it's a tried and true messaging framework I use. It's what's your value prop. It could translate to like what you believe in, what you want to say, what topics you want to talk about. Then it goes down to like, benefits. And this usually translates to like a product messaging framework, but it could be like, your three pillars. I believe in, you know, no matter how small an act, you can have a positive effect on the environment and then like pillar 2 could be like, showing how small acts of resistance can have a
Yep.
positive impact. And then 3 could just be like how other people are doing it, or how like, it's not all doom and gloom. There's some great work happening out there. Here's some examples. So having that framework, and you can kind of bucket your thoughts in that so you don't feel so scattered, because I feel like I personally experienced it. You go to write like a LinkedIn post, or you go to write like a Substack post, and you're just like, what do I even want to talk about? Why am I even here? I have nothing to say. But it kind of grounds you, and it's kind of like,
Right.
okay, these are my core pillars and thoughts. We're just going to write about this. Or like, it also kind of streamlines your thoughts. So if you're, taking a walk, or you're going throughout your day, or at the grocery store, you can make like a quick voice note, or you can like make type an idea on your phone. It's like, oh, I do want to write a post about XYZ. Like I was just on a hiking trip, and I looked insane, but I was like making voice memos to myself about like different ideas I was having.
Yeah.
Like people hiking around me, like I had to make lots of disclaimers, like you are safe. I just have a burst of creativity. So
I
that's
I hear you loud and clear though. I mean, I was walking the dogs last week and, was dealing with the result of having a strained muscle. And I was like, there's something to talk about here. You know what I mean? It was like my lower leg was driving me crazy. May have been using Chat GPT to try to figure out what was actually going on. And I was like, there's actually something here to talk about or to write about potentially.
And that's the great thing I love about content and ideas is that they will pop up whenever. And it's kind of like you just got to capture them. So like that's my biggest.
It's the adage of keeping that small, pen and paper or notebook neck on your bedside stand because
Exactly.
the middle of the night is when the clarity comes, right?
Yes, for sure.
To sort of frame back a little bit, I know you and I, both care deeply about justice. How do you see we can actually use content to challenge power structures and not just perform activism? It's a big challenge also. Right?
It is. And I actually had a conversation with a client about this earlier today. And, I can't speak for everyone.
Yep.
But kind of the end result of that conversation was this idea that we all have more in common than we have differences. So finding those common threads, those commonalities, those opportunities for partnership is a lot easier to convert a non-believer than to just hammer in your point, regardless of how they're feeling about it, their viewpoints. Because I have experience, in personal life, someone in my life would absolutely not say that they live a sustainable life or, they don't believe in some of these, these acts or, just the purpose of it. But seeing how they live, they're just putting another word on what they're doing, but it's totally just framing. So I think it's assuming noble intent that everyone's just trying to do the best they can. And it's creating content that finds those commonalities, but then also adding really concrete examples. So that could be data, that could be customer stories, whatever you want to further bolster your argument. But then also it's asking for partnership, it's asking for feedback and being open to what people who might not necessarily agree to you are saying, because it's a learning opportunity for them, but it's also a learning opportunity for yourself.
Right.
So I think it's being open and assuming noble intent.
I have to say one of the biggest things I've integrated into my coaching and the way that I work with clients over the last handful of years is this understanding that even if someone is saying something that you completely disagree with or that is incorrect or wrong, having a preset understanding that at least 10% of what they're saying is true can allow you to take that from a more collaborative standpoint, right? And I think in the world that we live in, especially these days, understanding how to bridge across the fence or across the divide is so critical. And you mentioned grace earlier. Grace is a big part of that, but at least, understanding that if you disagree with someone, at least 10% of what they're saying true can be interpreted in a couple different manners also, because it's all about what you believe inside yourself that can be considered a piece of truth, right? But it brings us closer together. But even more to frame up there, if you see someone say who wants to embed justice into their communication strategy, what do you see as the first step they can take?
I think it depends on industry is not the right word for but it kind of depends on where you want to go, what arena you're going to play in, because first and foremost, it can't be a flaky belief in this one thing that you want to build a brand on, because people are going to see straight through that.
Right.
And that's not going to help anybody. You're just adding to the noise. So it's kind of for example, for myself, it's climate, but even digging deeper, climate tech, and then you dig a little deeper, my sweet spot is the built environment, because I believe and it's also a fact that we spend so much of our lives inside buildings. They need to work for us and we need to work with them, and it's all about design and systems. But
Right.
It's not it's just not making things up. You have to have facts that back up your claims. You
Yep.
can't just throw things out. You can't just be willy-nilly about it, the technical term. But then it goes back to like your core beliefs. Like this is the hill I will die on,
Right.
because I feel like most people respect you for having a viewpoint and being willing to stand behind it. Like the biggest thing, and I hate to use this word, but you have to be authentic in your beliefs.
Yep.
And you have to be able to stand behind it. When someone challenges you, you have to, have great reasons and be able to articulate. Oh my gosh, articulate. Well, that was ironic. Articulate those
Yeah.
values and your mission very clearly. So, like that's the big thing. Don't do it just to do it, and walk the talk. So those are the main things for me.
Part of it, I guess, is like, I coach a lot of emerging and executive leaders on using ikigai, the Japanese concept for a reason for being, to get to the center of what drives them at an individual level. If we could figure out a way to do a corporate version of ikigai for a company, that could be a way that leads towards greater justice. That's a totally riff off the cuff idea.
Love that. We should work on that.
Yeah, let's do it. Awesome. All right, MK, this was such a grounding, energizing conversation. You've reminded us all here, I think, that storytelling isn't fluff. It's about the force that comes into play. And that whether you're, shaping a founder's journey or a climate campaign, the real stories are what always helps. We need to rise to the surface, basically. MK, where can people connect with you and learn more about your work?
Yeah, so you can find me on LinkedIn. So it's MK, the initials, and then McGowan, McGowan. And then my website is mkmcgowanstudios.com. And there's links to like book a call if you have any questions. Happy to hear any feedback. Open to anyone's perceptions on this episode. Happy to chat about them.
Very cool. And then I guess to sort of wrap up, MK, for the mission-driven founders feeling overwhelmed by the noise, what's your one piece of real deal advice that you would give to them?
Yeah, I would say get out of your head and get your thoughts down on paper and then let them marinate a little bit. And then use that messaging framework I talked about earlier. It just helps organize your thoughts, and it frees up your brain space to have better ideas. So just get out of your head, write it down.
That's beautiful, MK. Thank you. All right. Well, thanks for tuning in to Is Anything Real in Paid Advertising, the show where we find the signal behind the noise. I'm Adam W. Barney. Subscribe, leave a review, and check the show notes for more. Thank you, MK.
Thank you.
Scaling fast, but who's flying the rocket? If you're a VC-backed founder, 7 to 8 figure operator, or executive team scaling fast but heading toward burnout, I help you rebuild your energy system, reclaim 10 to 20 hours a week, and lead with clarity, stamina, and execution energy. 2 seats open now. DM me recalibration or go to adamwbarney.com to lock in a clarity call. Clarity over chaos, always.